I am delighted to be here with you this afternoon because I think that what I have to share with you is the awesomeness of our God. A God who cares personally about us, a God who heals our brokenness, a God who wants us to live a godly life in accordance with how He made us. And so that's part of what I'm going to share with you this afternoon. It's critical that we recognize, and this isn't really my topic, but it's intertwined, it's critical that we realize for every abortion there's both a man and a woman. And in our society, if there's one thing we've done, it's break down that unity. It's to break down this mutuality. We've said to men, well, you're a sperm donor, but that's it. And if I choose to have the child, well, then maybe you'll have to pay child support. When we took men out of this experience, we left the women standing alone and afraid. And it's critical that we put the two of them back together again. And as I share this information this afternoon about the biochemistry of sex, I think you'll see how critical it is that we are truly designed by God to be partners, to be forever changed by our sexual relationships. So I just share that with you because I invite you to start telling people about it. This is going to be much more accessible, honestly, than the San Francisco conference was. It's designed for caregivers and it's designed for fathers. It's designed for those who care about them. Everybody's welcome. It'll be 2 days. So share that word. There is a website that we converted from the first conference, and as soon as there's details, the information will be on that website. It's menandabortion.info, spelled out. And there's some very interesting research there in terms of men, pregnancy and things like that, which I will say some things about today. But it's a resource for you because you are all evangelists. You touch tons of lives in terms of the people you know, the friendship circles, the family. So I just raise that awareness with you as we move forward in this section. I got interested in this whole question of the biochemistry of sex because I've spent my life picking up the pieces or helping people to pick up the pieces of sexual decision making. And I got involved in a group called the Association of Prenatal and Perinatal Psychology and Health, which is one of the most fascinating groups I've ever belonged to. Their conferences are always just, I come away just going, wow, I hadn't thought about that. They all believe that babies begin at conception, and there's some new age folks who think babies start before, but I can deal with that. I'm okay with that. They bring together, it's a very eclectic group, so they bring together cellular biologists and birth companions and midwives and researchers and therapists, and again, I learn a ton of stuff from this conference. Well, I had gotten involved in the group because I was trying to figure out how to help mothers who'd had abortions to bond better in their next pregnancy. It's very difficult in that next pregnancy following an abortion for the mother who's had one because she's very fearful that something's going to happen to this baby, that God somehow is going to punish her. God doesn't work that way, but it feels that way. She has trouble bonding because this baby reminds her of the baby that isn't here. Birth goes badly because many times the atmosphere of a birthing room sets off her memories of the abortion clinic, the medical sort of ambiance of that setting. And then she goes home with this baby and she's confronted with what she lost. And so I got, as I said, involved because I was curious about that. And so I was reading a book entitled The Anthropology of Mothering by Sarah Hrdy, and I stumbled upon something. And oftentimes, the things in our own lives that are unexplained to us are the things that lead us to something else. And I was saying to somebody at lunch today, I think I'm probably actually attention deficit disordered because I'm easily distracted. I can concentrate once I've got my new distraction going on, but this leads me here to there to there. An eclectic brain is how I prefer to speak about it. And one of the things that I read was that women cycle together, that we women by scent will be cycling together. And I was intrigued by this because I had this following experience with a friend of mine. I met this woman when we had our fourth children. She lived down the block, and we started to see each other often because our kids were the same age and we walked them to school. We had our fifth children within a month of each other, and our sixth children were due at exactly the same time, which I thought was pretty weird. And I made a joke because she and I were both on parish council at the time, and I said to the parish council members, I was president, she was vice president, the March meeting will be at St. Mary's Hospital because Joan and I will both be there. Not really believing that, but that's what the doctors told us. So I went on the 23rd, my daughter Miriam was born on the 24th, Joan came on the 24th, shortly after Miriam was born, and John was born on the 25th. I never resolved that in my head. I thought it was weird. But I had also observed that cousins run in families, that oftentimes there will be a cluster of cousins within a certain age range. Some families, they're more scattered, but when I say that, do you have cousins your age? Almost everybody nods their head yes, okay? Well, here's the anthropological explanation, and that is we women needed to cycle together because we lived in community, all right? And because we lived in community and we didn't have baby bottles or, any of that stuff, if my child was going to survive should I die, somebody in my kin circle had to be able to nurse my baby and had to be able to be at the same point of nursing that I was, because toddler milk and newborn milk is very different. So this was an aha moment for me that Joan and I had become kin by virtue of spending time together. Well, that's what set off this whole talk that you're now going to hear. Just so that's a little bit of background. It's important that we know not only the biology but also the anthropology. Who are we? Who were we in another time? It's easy to forget that life wasn't always like it is now, that we have access to baby bottles and formula and artificial wombs and surrogate parents and all this kind of thing. So let me just sort of back up and begin at a place. Now, hopefully I can get where I need to go. All right. Let me begin with another piece that sort of popped up when I started doing this reading in terms of the questions of interconnectedness and how God made us. And I had heard that your grandma, when your mom was in your grandma, all the eggs that became you and your siblings were already present in your mother when she was 20 weeks old in utero. And the Chinese say that we're much more likely to get the diseases of our grandmothers than our mothers because the chemistry that formed the eggs that became you were present in your grandma's body. So that's just something to ponder in terms of your own health issues. Now, again, we live in a society where there's even conflicted information and confusion. Is that really a baby in utero? Maybe it's just a clump of cells. We still do some of that. Then you look at what we know in terms of the life in utero and you go, whoa, I guess that is a baby. But what babies are capable of and what's going on in their bodies is truly remarkable. And the bottom line for us to keep in mind is, as I said, 20 weeks in utero, your mother had 6 million eggs present, okay? By the time she was born, this is true of all of us women, they've dropped down to 2 million. And by the time we get our periods, we're down to about 400 to 450,000 eggs, all right? We women have all those eggs from the get-go. You guys have the elemental form of sperm early on, somewhere around 20 weeks also, but yours continues to develop fresh all the time. Ours are there, all right? They're already in our ovaries. Well, this was just sort of intriguing to me about that question of interconnectedness, and then I came upon the work of a man by the name of Brian Sykes, and Brian Sykes had written a book called The 7 Daughters of Eve. I highly recommend it to you if you like this kind of science thing. What he discovered is that the mitochondria that we carry in our cells, now those are the little energy bodies that everybody has. Nobody has the mitochondria of their father. You only have the mitochondria of your mother's 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 mother. And in fact, if they took a little cell sample, and National Geographic actually has this research project going on for $100, you can do this, you will find that you descend from one of 7 lines of women with the implication of an Eve. And this is just very, very interesting when you think about it, this interconnectedness in terms of family. Well, Sykes was then going to another conference, and there was another guy named Sykes there, and everybody's going, hey, are you 2 guys related? And he's like, well, never heard of him. Yeah, we spell our name the same, but I've never heard of him. And then he got to thinking that maybe there was a marker for guys as well as women. I mean, this feminine mitochondria, and what he discovered was that the Y that you gentlemen carry is your father's 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 Y. All right? No deviations. There's a couple extra little lines in the Y. There's a little subgroup in the Y. There's a little marker for some guys, and it is those who are of the priestly caste in the Jewish tradition and men of the Igbo tribe in Nigeria, and their tradition is that they come from the Holy Land. And some years ago, U.S. News and World Report did a big article on this, and they had a Hispanic priest from New Mexico who got involved in the research. And what Father discovered, much to his amazement, was that he carried the priestly marker on the Y. He has no idea if he has Jewish relatives or Igbo relatives or where that came from, but he actually carried the marker. So this question of interconnectedness as God made us. See, I'm somebody who always ponders, what's all that begatting about in the Bible? I mean, there's pages of that. I'm like, you could have saved a lot of paper. Who cares? All right? Clearly, God cares. All right? That line, the lineage, is important. And we are truly all interconnected. And I just want to say to you that from a bioethical standpoint, we are now really messing with stuff that we can't begin to think about. And so when I get sperm from the sperm bank, my son, if it's a Y, isn't going to know his biological descent or the predecessors. If we do surrogacy, so I buy an ovum from a bright young college woman. Any of you are tempted to do that, don't. It can ruin your fertility permanently. But they offer a lot of money for it. Looks pretty simple. So I buy an ovum from some college woman, and then I get sperm from the sperm bank, and then I find a nice woman who is going to carry my baby for me, and then you're going to give it to me. I tell you that we are going to be looking at health issues here beyond the pale, and I'll explain it a little more later. The issue of surrogacy is huge in India right now, of people going to India and effectively buying babies. They don't let you use your own ovum anymore because you get too attached, so you might not be able to surrender this baby who was a resident for 9 months, but apparently that's it. Now in the States, there was a big article maybe 3 weeks ago, Newsweek, front cover, surrogacy in this country. The wives of military are jumping into surrogacy big time. They have really good health insurance, they make a lot of money, and what happens to those children? What happens to the siblings? What happens to the connectedness? We are doing things that we have trouble, keeping track of at this point.